What's up, guys? The 95 Corvette. This car, get your finger in there. This car has been the bane of my existence. So, let's switch around here. If you've been following this car, the whole story started when I went to California, visit my friends last year, and I found not this car, but I found a 95 convertible, red, black interior. Nice car, 85,000 mile car. Very nice shape, well taken care of. And I didn't go to California to buy a car, but I saw it and I really liked it. I've always liked these cars just because the C4s were they were really groundbreaking when they first came out. But let's face it, the early ones, when they first came out, it was 84, and 84 is kind of the one you don't want. But those cars, the 80s cars and the early 90s cars, they're getting a little bit long in the tooth. I like this car, or the previous car, I should say. I like it because it was a later gen. It was a 95. This is a 95. So it kind of represents the best of the generation. They kind of got everything worked out, especially the 95 and 96 cars. They did more padding inside and just really refined. Anyway, so I had the first car, drove it for a little while, really liked it, just enjoyed it. And just so happened I found this car while I still owned the other car. This one was in Georgia, and what I liked about it is it already had a lot of stuff on it. It had new shocks. It had a considerably less miles. This is a 50,000 mile car. It had already had the lowering kit on it. It already had wheels. I was not a fan of the wheels. I actually took the wheels off and swapped them out for these. But the nice thing was I was able to sell them, and it paid for these. So it was a wash. It had brand new tires on it. It was a sharp car. So I bought it. And the nice thing is I sold the first one, and I made a considerable chunk of money on the first one that basically went towards this one. So I really stole this car. If you look at it this way, if you look at what I made on the first car and what I bought this car for and had it shipped, it was in Georgia, it worked out to about nine grand. So that's a pretty good starting point for a low mile C4 convertible. So I got it, swapped the wheels out, did my little stuff. I ended up getting another half inch out of the front. I had to modify the spring up front to get it to drop lower because it looked funny when I got it. It actually was a little bit higher in the front than the back. So dropped a little bit more in front. What else did I do? I fixed the headlight motor. I converted the whole car. I do it with every car I get. Or the older cars, I should say. I converted the whole car to LED. So the headlights, all the running lights, basically every bulb you can think of has been converted to LED. It just makes such a nicer look inside when it's bright white. But anyway, so I loved the car. They handle great, but they just really are kind of down on power for modern standards. The LT1's a 300 horsepower motor. Keep in mind they're a lot of torque. And it says right here, I forget what they're rated at torque-wise, 340. So I thought, you know what? I'll just throw a cam in it. And I started looking into it, and the hot ticket was to do the cam and heads through Lloyd Elliott. He is the LT1 guru. His name kept popping up, kept seeing his name in all these discussions, all these boards. I'm like, wow, well, I'll pull the cam, I'll pull the heads, and I'll send it to this guy. Well, I found out that he's 45 minutes away from me, so that's great. Everybody else has to send their stuff to him. I could drive it down. So, pulled the heads off. And I took the heads and gave them to Lloyd because that was going to take a while to do, and then I figured I'd get to taking the cam out of it. The way that this car is set up is there's a harmonic balancer, and then the OptiSpark is behind it, and both of those block the timing cover, which of course I would need to get out to get the cam out of it. The harmonic balancer, it even just saying that when I'm thinking about this car pains me. let's talk about, I mentioned the bane of my existence before this car. It's not really, but that harmonic balancer caused me massive amounts of grief. And here's why. One, tried all the tricks. The way that it's on there is it's a pressed on hub. It's an interference fit onto the crank, and then the balancer bolts onto it. So I went through all the tutorials. I read all the different things of what to do for it, and could not get the balancer separated from the hub, which is not a huge deal. Usually you can remove it even with the hub and the balancer are connected. I could not get the thing off. I tried everything. In retrospect, my friend Don said I should have used an induction heater, which you put it down there and it gets really hot and it expands it enough to pop it off. And that probably would have been the way to go. But since I could not get the balancer out or off, that locked up everything getting the cam out of it. So now I had to pull the motor. So once I wrapped my head around that, got to pull in the motor. And the crappy part is you can usually bolt into the heads and run your straps for your lift. Well, the heads were already off it and they were down with Lloyd. So I had to come up with this weird, I had to use straps and hooks and prayers. And anyway, I got it out, but it was scary taking it out with the strap. So I got the motor out. Now the motor's out of it. It's on an engine stand. And I'm thinking, well, now that I've got the engine out of it, I'm right here. I might as well just go ahead and do the bearings. I'm right here. I've got time while I'm waiting for the heads. I'll just do the bearings. So I started taking the bottom end off it. Took all the main caps out. Got the bearings going. Let's just have full disclosure right now. My first go around, I did not know what I was doing. It was my first time with a big car engine. I've done lots of motorcycle engines, but cars and car engines are a different animal. Maybe not for you, but for me, it was a learning curve. I have learned more in the last 2 months than I've probably learned in the last 5 years of my life. Unfortunately, it's all about engines. It would be nice if it was about, I don't know, making money. That'd be a nice one to learn a lot about. But anyway, I'm pretty much an expert now. I'm not really. I'm an expert on, actually, I am an expert on this engine because I have been into every corner and every angle and every possible thing and learned everything about this thing that you could possibly know. But getting back to my story, basically what happened was when I did my thought was I can just disconnect the connecting rods, I can loosen up the main caps, and I can spin in the bearings. I don't need to pull the crank or any of that. Wrong, way wrong. So learned that just, I put it back together. I didn't torque it in the right sequence. I torqued the connecting rods first and the main bearings after that. Big mistake. The thing I couldn't even turn it with a wrench. In fact, I broke off a bolt inside the crank trying to turn it before I knew what was going on. I know, probably most of you are like, this guy's a freaking idiot, but just hear me out. So after I luckily extracted that bolt out of it, I said, screw, I'm going to do it. I took everything apart. I consulted all the guys I know that really know motors. I read all the posts on the internet, and I wanted to just take my time and do it right. So I had the motor completely apart. I honed out all the cylinders. It was down to nothing. I had it totally apart, pistons out of it. And I honed the cylinders. I got new rings. I put new rings in. I got a second set of bearings. I put new bearings in. I put them in correctly. I torqued everything correctly. I sealed everything up. Everything was going together great. Got 95% of the motor together on a stand, and was at the last point, which was our friend, the frickin' harmonic balancer. And I won't go into great detail, but let's just say I trusted someone to put that knew what they were doing to put the balancer on. I'm not going to name names, but they didn't know what they were doing, and they did it this time though, broke off the bolt in the crank. Unfortunately, it was such a bad day for me when that happened. It's all coming back to me. But unfortunately, when that happened the second time, it was cranked in under so much load that I could not get the thing out. I tried with every trick I know for removing bolts. I'm pretty good at removing stuck bolts, but it was not going anywhere. It was completely stuck. So I didn't know what I was going to do. I mean, I started looking at new rotating assemblies and what have you, and a good friend of mine who I'm sure is going to watch this video, I asked him first, I said, well, can't I re-tap it and put a bigger bolt in it? And he said, no. And one morning we went to breakfast, and I kind of asked him again. He said, well, you can't do it by hand, but you could have a machine shop do it. It was a great day of my life because now I had hope. So that was Sunday. That Monday, in fact, no, I came home that Sunday and started taking the engine apart. So the engine was ready to go back in, but now I had to take it completely apart down to the bones and get the crank out of it. So sometimes things hit you and it's just overwhelming, but after you take a little while and wrap your head around it, they get better. And that's kind of what happened with that. So I started taking the motor apart, got it all apart, and got the crank out of it. Took the crank over to frickin' Guru out here, engine building guy. Thank goodness we have those. This guy, Calvert's Engines, old guy, took it, looked at it, and said, yeah, no problem. We'll tap. It was 7/16. We'll tap it. Let me think. It was 7/16 threads. We'll tap it to, I forgot. It's been a long day, guys. I think it was, I think it was 1/2 inch, and then they were going to tap it to 7/16, the next step up. I think that's how it went. So they handled that, and since I had taken it apart, I had to buy another set of bearings just because I was paranoid that taking them apart and cranking them and whatever, I thought I was going to screw them up. So bearings are cheap. I bought another set of main bearings. I left the connecting rod bearings and got the crank back, put the whole motor together, put everything back together. The next problem was because I had tapped out the crank, now there was no such thing as a harmonic balancer installer for the car because everything was made for 1/2 inch threads. Now I'm 7/16. So I had to make my own installer. I had to get 7/16 rod stock hardened and then harden bolts and everything. And I had to heat that thing up to like Satan's underwear, like 500 degrees. I got it up to about, what did I put it at? I think I put it at like 350 in the oven. I was just worried about like cooking it too much in there. Hold on, let me take a look at my notes here. I wrote it down. It's baked 250. Yeah, that makes sense because I was worried if I went higher than 250, I might cook something. I think there's rubber or elastomer or something inside those balancers. I'm not sure. I don't want to fry the thing. So I heated it up to 250, got it out, sitting right here on the stand, and ran out here with oven mitts, had my little setup, my little tool that I made. In fact, it's over here. I kept it. And spun that thing on. And let me tell you, when it was going on, right here. So that's it. So that was in, those come off. That was in the crank, and then these spun on. But let me tell you, when that was going on, that was a tense moment. It felt like it was going to break again. I was paranoid, but I got it on there. That was a great day. So I got that on and then got the engine ready to go back in the car, and then realized I was able to take it off with the hood on because I was coming out this way. But going back in to hook up with the torque converter and all that fun stuff, you got to go in from the front, which means I had to take the hood off, which is, I don't know. Let me just say, getting it back on completely lined up and correct, I'm still not sure if it's perfect. I mean, you got to get the gap line correct here. You got to get the gap line correct here. You got to get, there's two adjustments up front. You got to make sure that these are, it was difficult. I'll have to work on that some more to get that to work. But got the hood off it, got the motor in it, and then the next hurdle was getting these headers to work. Now, they were eBay headers, so they were relatively cheap. They were about $600. But they had tubes coming up for the air valves, which I had to have removed and welded. Removed them, and then they welded them up. But getting them to work, you can see it's really, really tight right there. It is clear, but it's tight. And then it was just a lot of work to get. I had to elongate the holes. I had to make kind of like custom bolts for them to get them to work. And I'm still not a fan of them. If I did it again, I would. There weren't a lot of choices out there as far as people that still make headers for these cars. But anyway, they work. I started up a few times. The day I got it started was another great day, but it was uncorked. It was loud. It was shaking the house. I got the exhaust done last week. It's going to the resonator. I did the resonator because I had kind of played around with not having the resonator before I did the motor work, and it was a lot of drone. So I did the MagnaFlow resonator, but I think I'm going to ditch the MagnaFlow fenders just because it sounds kind of wonky. I mean, not wonky, but just quiet. Here, you guys have sat in this long watching this stupid video. I can at least start the car for you. Hold on one sec. Here we go. Anyway, so where we're at right now is I'm doing the tune for it. I had to go through and I set up something cool. I set up a wideband O2 so that I can... hold on. Check it out. And I set it up so that I can turn it on when I need it. There we go. Wideband O2 and then hidden. That'll help with the tuning. But I'm in the final stages with it. Just got to get the tuning. It's actually, the tune on it right now is safe enough to drive. So if it wasn't going to be thunderstorms tomorrow, I would probably drive it. But I don't really have much left to do. I did a full sound system in it. It sounds great. It's like 1,500 watts. When it was apart, I redid all the suspension bushings to polyurethane, and one last thing that I had to overcome. So had a lot of problems with the exhaust clearing the X-brace. So the convertible cars have an X-brace that runs underneath. That's how they get their here's a little fun fact for you. When they designed the C4, they were supposed to be T-top cars, but at the last minute they switched to the Targa, and it really kind of threw the engineers as to how to get the car stiff. So the Targa obviously had the post going over, so it got some rigidity there. But a convertible car obviously doesn't have that. So what they came up with was they ran an X-brace under the car. The problem with the X-brace is if you lower the car, it wants to rub. And it was also conflicting with the exhaust. So what I did, here, get down here, check it out. So happy and flexible. These things, you see them right here. These are made by a company called Vet to Vet. And basically what they do is they keep the frame rail in tension, which basically eliminates the need for the X-brace. And there's one on each side. So these are basically just keeping tension here, and it kind of does the same thing. But then you can ditch the X-brace. And there's my exhaust. Looks nice, huh? Darren at Excalibur Muffler did it. He did a nice job. He did put in the bungs for the wideband O2 and the O2 sensors and all that fun stuff. So, and now I can go lower, and I think I'm gonna go lower. I got a lot of room. I might put coilovers on the front, which will give me another half inch. I think a half-inch drop on this car, half inch more, it'll be perfect. So anyway, that is my sad story, guys. If you were at this point watching this video, thank you for hanging in there. But it was never the plan. It was never ever the plan to go that deep into the motor. It's something that I got into and then I had to get out of, and it was it was quite, I don't think mechanically there's been anything. I mean, guys pull motors and do this kind of stuff all the time, but for me, that deep into a motor and bearings and all the stuff I had to learn and solve and figure out and overcome, I think it was probably one of the biggest challenges mechanically I've ever had to deal with. So now I watch it methodically for leaks. It's not leaking anything. And fiddle around some more with the tune, and man, it's ready for summer. So anyway, all right, guys, thanks for watching this. Take care.